all he needed to do. Those are some of my earliest memories. How's Ness and Dormer coming along?
Oh, it's not.
Okay.
I'm a big tomcat and I'm not very fat, and I live in a dustbin lid. In the middle of the night you can hear me fight, and my name is Mighty Sid.
Oh!
Remember that one?
I remember that one.
And that's how it worked out.
I'm from Mum, and the influence of my grandfather on my mum's side, who was a concert pianist. I got my great love of classical music and my understanding perhaps a little bit of the discipline necessary for that kind of music to be made properly. And so there was just this kind of mad musical blur in my childhood of Mum playing, oh, I don't know, Bach two-part inventions or Chopin or Debussy or whatever. They were her favourite composers. Grandad loved bigger things. He was a tiny chap with tiny hands, and they were crippled because he had to give up playing and take up welding in the Depression. He taught us all to play. So this immensely rich, diverse mixture, which is South Yorkshire, is what I was brought up on. It was my fertiliser, if you like. And everybody seemed to be into music. It really expressed the community. I think that was the thing for me. It was linked with life in general. It was linked, in a way, with those people, because, you know, it was a hard life. Mining, steel industry, you know, a lot of railway people.
Your father's railwayman?
Yes, my dad was on the railways. He was a signalman. He was a baker before that, and then he was a signalman.
It was a lonely box. It's in the middle of thorn moors, and there was not a lot of work to be done. I used to read an awful lot, and eventually I decided to apply for O-levels.
He decided he wanted to go to teach training college. You know, he dictated the books that he needed onto tapes and splashed out on a proper tape recorder. And I've got fantastic memories of my dad on foggy November days on his bike, on his push bike, going off to his signal box with this massive tape recorder on his back and 2 shopping bags full of tapes and books, you know. And he'd go off, and in between pulling the levers, you know, he taught himself what he needed to get into college. And I mean, when you've got an example like that, when you've got resourcefulness like that around you, to want to become an opera singer is nothing at all, you know. I mean, I knew how to sing. My dad had no idea how to be a teacher. And then I won the Cleethorpes Cup. This was a big moment. Now, you will know, Melvin, that this is a very serious Northern festival.
Yes, they are.
You know, the Cleethorpes Cup. You've arrived if you get the Cleethorpes Cup. There's Cleethorpes and there's Blackpool, you know, East Coast and West Coast. And I wasn't going to do Blackpool, was I? I'm from Yorkshire, so I went in for the Cleethorpes Cup. Oh, my little polyester frock.
When did you first come into contact with opera?
When I was about 16, I went to London, and it was the road to Damascus, basically. It was St Paul and the Revelation and everything. I went to ENO, I went to the Colosseum, and I saw Madame Butterfly, and I was completely blown away. And that was when I just thought, I have to do this now.
You're about 6 years at the Royal Academy and then a year at the National Opera Studio.
Yes.
That's about as long a training as it takes a GP, isn't it? So can you tell us what happens in those 7 years?
Well, the first couple of years you discover sex, drugs and rock and roll, and you waste your time completely, you know, and and you just, you know... My first term was hysterical because I went to the doyenne of all singing teachers in my first term, who was a lady called Flora Nielsen. Don't know if you remember her. And of course I sung what I'd been singing all my life. I thought, I know, I'll impress her, I'll do a bit of the Messiah. So in my first lesson, I sang, and suddenly there was with the angel a multitude of the heavenly host. I said, oh dear. She had a stroke not long after, and I moved on then to Henry Cummings. And I was with him for about a year, and then I discovered Joy Mammon, who's been my singing teacher ever since now, for nearly 20 years.
I think mostly all that I've done over the years is try to, as well as get her a technique so that she can manage to sing everything you can imagine she's done, for instance, this week, so many diverse things, but also to calm her down. This
first singing teacher had me put on Valium. This is no joke now. Not Joy, but dear old Flora, who passed on. She actually seriously had a doctor put me on Valium because she just found I was so excited to be there. It was my the whole dream of my life come true.
Briefly, what do you learn in those 7 years?
How to use what was actually a very, and still is, a very vital total instrument. Because all the muscles of the intercostal muscles, the diaphragm, all those obvious muscles, all the muscles of the chest that the voice is suspended from, all the muscles in the shoulder, and the fantastic muscles of the back that support the sound, that care for the sound, all of those need training, and all of those particularly need coordinating to make your optimum sound. Because to make the breath meet the larynx at the right moment, to create the right sound, is a very complex matter, but that's what takes 7 years. Every day before breakfast, before anything happens, I have to sort my sinuses out, because I get very blocked sinuses, especially when I've come to a foreign country and had a long flight. And it's absolutely vital to drink lots of water and to steam like crazy to clear the cathedral of my sound. And then when I've done that, I start really with exercises that warm up all the different bits of me, the muscles of the rib cage, the back particularly. After all of that, we get round to making sound, to doing actual scales. And then I eat my breakfast. But this climate is wonderful. I mean, nice work if you can get it. The colours in this place are fantastic, aren't they? It isn't Doncaster, that's for sure. I don't think I've ever done a concert when I've sunbathed like 3 hours before. Jumped into the throttle and gone and done it, which is what I think I'll be doing tomorrow. Drag me off that beach if you can. So this is the space I see. Wow. Oh, wow. Yeah. This is it? Yeah. One of the things that shocked me when I came down to the Royal Academy of Music was how music didn't seem to be part of the community in the way I'd always known it. And music was also, and this was the first time I encountered this, and it's in a way what I've spent my life fighting against. Music, I discovered, was compartmentalised. There were certain sorts of music, opera and classical music, which were considered separate from other sorts of music, from folk music, from pop music, and I suddenly felt my raw way of doing it, my love for it, my just, you know, my passion about it, was it misplaced somehow? And again, and opera as well was somehow the province of another group of people which I didn't belong to. I felt very rather lost in my early days, until relatively recently, I have to say. That's continued until I got to Eno, I suppose, and then it all began to feel better.
Do you think there's a sort of mission statement behind Eno? I mean,
oh,
do
yes,
you feel it? Yeah,
definitely, and one that I share. And
how would you describe it?
It's about access for everyone to the highest possible standard of opera we can provide. That's the first and simple tenet. But it's also about making opera accessible. It's also about keeping opera alive, keeping it growing, developing it, looking after it, nurturing it. And I suppose a third thing, I shouldn't forget the singers here, it's committed to the development of people like me. And without ENO, there won't be people like me.